Largest buck in Drury Outdoors history found dead. The hook is no hunters involved with this one. I set the hook, didn't I?
Heading in here to the farm. Wade, I was on another piece of ground, shed hunting, and then he sent me a text and said he'd come across Captain Hook dead, so.
There you are.
How big is he?
One of the biggest deers I've ever seen. Unreal.
Oh my.
Have you ever met somebody that walked up on what they thought was a rib cage of a dead deer during shed season, and when they got to it, it turns out to be a gigantic rack? I'm Matt Drury, and this is another installment of DoD TV. This segment of DoD TV is brought to you by PSE's Carbon Air. Experience performance. You know, I said this was a special edition of DoD TV, and I wasn't lying. The last time we found a deer of this caliber dead on the farm, he gave us a heart attack. This time we got Captain Hook, but unfortunately, no Peter Pan involved in this fairy tale. The second reason why it's a special edition, we got the boss man, Madman Mark Drury himself, to tell us all about how he came to know the infamous Captain Hook. Mark, why don't you tell us right now?
Okay, have it your way, Matt. For 26 years, Drury Outdoors has been about VHS and DVD and telling the wildest stories, telling the stories of our hunts, whether it be wild turkey, predators, or whitetail deer. And rather than doing DVDs anymore, we're going to start telling those stories through DoD TV. This is one of the first here on YouTube. This is a story of one of the most famous bucks in Drury Outdoors history. It's about Captain Hook. And we found this buck within the last few days, and although that's the ending, it's really where this story now begins. So ends the story of one of the most famous deer on the Missouri farm, Captain Hook. Many of you may have already seen the Facebook Live we did with him. If not, we wanted to put together a special DoD TV episode with one of the most storied deer in Drury Outdoors history. Wade found him this morning while we were shed hunting. He called Missouri Department of Conservation because when you come across a head that you want to keep, you've got to get a salvage tag. I've been kind of keeping him a secret while he was still alive, to be honest with you. You don't find Missouri deer of this stature or caliber too very often. Finding Captain Hook dead allowed me to go back through all the pictures that I had of this incredible deer. And it goes back to the winter, I guess December of 2010. The first pictures I had of this awesome Missouri buck. I looked at the pictures and I was like, man, beautiful rack. I estimated him at that time to be a 4.5-year-old buck. I really wasn't sure on his age, but I just knew that he was a nice deer, and it was the first pictures I had of him. That's one thing about Missouri, or that area of Missouri. I'm really close to the Iowa border. I see a lot of bucks come and go. Well, this buck walked into our camera's life and our life, and I could only hope that in years to follow, he would stay. And stay he did. We've put a tape to him already, and he taped out, believe it or not, at exactly 200 inches. No eighths. He was 200 on the button. Had he not broken this, there was another 6 or 7 inches there, so he would have been a 206, 207 inch Missouri whitetail. Going into 2011, I was hoping to get pictures of a deer we named Captain Hook. And I got a few daylight pictures of him there in September. And then the randomness that would be part of his overall makeup started to take place and started to occur. I didn't get another picture of that deer until December. And he was a head scratcher. I knew he was a nice deer. I looked at that frame and I looked at those G1s, and at this time I think he's 5.5 years old. And I'm like, September, December, he's rutting somewhere else. So I really couldn't put my finger on how we were going to try and kill this deer. Doesn't mean that he wasn't there, but it certainly meant that I wasn't getting many pictures, and I had a lot of cameras in what I considered his home core. We had a few pictures, but no sightings when we were out there hunting whatsoever. Then it was the summer of 2012, and in mid-August, I get pictures of Captain Hook. I had cameras out from late June or early July, all the way through the entire season, and I get these awesome daylight pictures in mid-August, August 12th or 13th, and he is a giant. At this time, I'm thinking he's 6.5 years old, And I'm looking at him going, man, I only hope he can become just a little bit more regular. So I keep my cameras out through September, through October, nothing, not another single pick. And then the rut comes and I stop checking cameras. It's time to start hunting. And then all of a sudden one evening, Wade and I are sitting there, and the story that unfolded was just one worth sharing over and over again.
We're gonna go down here and see what that buck's doing. It doesn't sound like he's on a doe. It sounds like he might be dying. We're just gonna go check it out and see what's going on up there. Cause that's still doing it. Yeah, he's still growling for 10 minutes. And he's not stopping. Let's go see what's going on. The one is Captain Hook. I've got pictures of him this summer. Haven't seen him since mid-August. This is not gonna be easy. Wow. I'll watch him if you wanna go get this off. Let's see if we can get him apart. Is the one dead? This ain't good. This ain't gonna be easy. Don't cut their heads, you know. Careful, careful, don't cut them. Dang it, you almost had it, you almost had it. And I could still remember vividly him running away up through that timber, and he was a giant then. He was already 180 class deer. And then he just got bigger and bigger and more mass and more stickers and more kickers, and just an incredible buck. We really wondered whether we were ever going to see either of them again. Granted, they were only locked up for a period of probably 20 to 30 minutes from the time we first heard them until we had them freed. But there's enough stress in that situation, you really worry about whether either of those guys are going to make it. We go through gun season, we don't see Hook. I check cameras there towards the latter part of November, and again, the randomness occurs. I get a couple awesome pictures of him throughout November, and just no sightings. So we had the great encounter. He was still alive. That was good. We had confirmation in late November he was still alive. And then boom, more randomness in December. I get a few pictures of him. Season comes to a close. No additional sightings. I could only hope that we would see him again the following year. What'd you think when you came across him, Wade?
Well, whenever you pop over a hill through cedars and you see that.
You see rib cages that look like that. The rack's bigger than the ribs.
Yeah.
He certainly had our attention. We just weren't ever able to put him on film for you. So the summer of 13 rolls around, and again, cameras out late June, check them July, August, and then all of a sudden, almost a year to the date, he shows back up full daylight. And I mean, it's an awesome series of pictures. Here's this gorgeous, clearly gross Boone and Crockett deer over that 180, 190 class deer. And at this time, I think he's 7.5 years old. And I'm thinking, this randomness is just driving me crazy. No pictures, and then all of a sudden, unbelievable pictures. So we go into the season with a plan. We're hoping to run into this deer. So we get a few pictures of him in October, and then nothing until late November. Then we get December and January pics of the deer. So clearly he makes it through rifle season, but going through the bow season and the Missouri rifle season, no one lays eyes on this giant. And the interesting thing is I probably have 20 cameras in this area, and I only get him on 2 or 3 in a very small home range. I never got him outside of about, I'm gonna say 160 acres, maybe 200 acres. Every picture I got of him was within that home range, but yet he was random within that home range, and I had pictures all around that home range. So once again, the randomness of Captain Hook always left me scratching my head. The summer of 14 rolls around, and I'm thinking, well, mid-August, I'm going to get pictures of Captain Hook right at the same camera that I've gotten in the last 2 years, right? Well, I get him about a quarter mile from there at one of the cameras I usually get in late July. He wasn't fully developed, but he is a giant. Once again, he's in that home core area, and then I just stayed out of there. Opening day of Missouri bow season is September the 15th. And I told Wade, I said, you know, I think anytime we sit within his home core area, we've got about a 1 in 100 chance of ever seeing him, because he was that random. He'd show up once about every 3 months on our cameras. Sat there, a good shooter comes out, a 5-year-old, and I was able to take him for our show 13. We go in, we recover the deer, we do all the heroes, all the pictures, we drive in, we get the buck, we pull him out, and we're out of there. That was September the 15th. I eventually checked the cameras in that area, and about 60 yards away, on September the 16th, during full daylight, which he had never done before, here's Captain Hook in all of his glory. Those are the first pictures I had of him since those late July pictures when he wasn't fully developed. He's standing there, and he's right there where we did all of that intrusion the night before, killing the deer, photos, interviews, all that stuff, get him out, and then the next night he steps out daylight right down the tree row. And there's actually one picture in there where he's got his tongue out a little bit, and I always felt like he was sticking his tongue out at me, and there's that randomness once again of Captain Hook. But by this time, my bow tag's punched, and he's going to live at least until Missouri rifle season. Captain Hook's a little bit more regular. I'm getting pictures of him in October. And it came to my knowledge that a neighbor about 1.5 miles away had found his sheds. And I didn't think I'd ever get to hold those antlers, but it was pretty cool when I actually got to see them and see just how big this Missouri monster was. How about that, a set of antlers that I didn't know that I'd ever be able to hold. This is Captain Hook. You see the hooks on the ends of those beams, and he's got hooks all over, and he's hooked us. He's hooked our attention. From the day that we first got pictures of this big guy to the day that Wade and I encountered him when he was locked with that other buck, he has captured our imagination, and we're hoping this year, because he's bigger, badder, and better than ever, we're hoping that we can run into him. But it's kind of cool to hold his sheds and just dream. Awesome buck, awesome story. And it's Missouri rifle season, and Gary LaVox is up, and we actually pulled back just to scout for Captain Hook one day. And we're sitting there, it was early morning, the wind wasn't quite right for where we wanted to hunt. We look across the valley some 500 or 600 yards away, and he's standing there in a cut field right where I get all of his pictures with a hot doe. He's just standing there tending her. We watch them till 9 o'clock. He slips off the field into the cedar thicket, and he is 150 yards from our blind, the same blind where I had bow killed the deer last year on opening day. So we're sitting there, we come up with a plan. We said, the wind is pretty good. It's not exactly perfect, but we've got a blind that I consider fairly scent-proof. I'm going in alone that night with a rifle.
I haven't seen this deer in 3 years. I gotta try.
I sat there that night. It was a huge cold front, high pressure. I saw 100 deer. I saw 20 bucks, 5 different deer that were mature, but no Captain Hook. So I don't get another picture of him past that November the 18th day where I tried to go in after him. And in Missouri, when a deer goes MIA in the middle part of the month, you think he might have gotten shot. I had cameras in the whole area, no more pictures in November, nothing in December, nothing in January, no sheds. So I'm thinking Captain Hook's probably dead as we enter into the summer of 2015. By this time, he's probably 9.5 years old. So put the cameras out, and I checked the cameras. Who's back? On the same camera he was a couple years ago, Mr. Random himself, Captain Hook. He shows up in mid-August, just like he had 2 years previous on the exact same camera. And we had high hopes going into that season. And season comes around, no sightings, but I am getting some great pictures up through late September. And then all of a sudden, MIA. No more pictures, no sightings, nothing. Nothing in late November, nothing December, January, and then the shed hunt rolls around, and there is the conclusion to our story. So finally, after I assumed he was dead last year, he shows back up, and then at age 9.5, where he wore one of his best racks, he wore an awesome rack for 4 years in a row, then we find him dead during the shed hunt in March. And that area where we found him dead is within, it's literally exactly where Gary and I were sitting when we were parked watching him across the way. It is 400 or 500 yards from where I got the bulk of his pictures, and it's certainly within that 160 to 200 acre home range. So Captain Hook was an unbelievably challenging deer to see. I got some great pictures through the years, but he was quite random when I got those pictures. Not only was he random at when he would come in, he was also random as to whether it would be daylight or dark. He was just one of those bucks that really got under our skin. And I look back through all the pictures of all the bucks I've ever had, and he's in my top 5 all time for overall score. This deer easily was 200 to 210, 215 the previous year, and we just weren't able to run into him. But a top 5 deer for me, it was a pleasure hunting him. What did I learn about him? Well, I learned that the randomness of certain deer make them extremely challenging to hunt, but that's also part of the magic and the allure to whitetail hunting, because you never know when that 1 in 100 chance is going to walk by and you're going to take the buck of a lifetime. Captain Hook proved that to me all too well. Sometimes we expect to go in and see a deer. With Captain Hook, I could only go in and hope to see that deer. I'm glad we were able to round out this story, and I'm glad we were able to share it with you here on DOD TV. It was a story worth sharing, that's for sure. Captain Hook, Mr. Random.
If you liked what you saw here, you better subscribe to the Drury Outdoors YouTube page, because we are going to start doing story after story. What you used to get on the DVDs is now coming to DOD TV right here on YouTube. Thanks for watching another edition of DOD TV.